Okay, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to work on the animated sprite class, so that way we can start actually doing some animations. And I'm going to start with just the coin that's on the menu screen, which give me a second, I'll pull it up right here. This coin right here, it flashes back and forth. It just goes between three different colors, and I have the sprite right here. I will probably be putting all these sprites in a folder and uploading them so that you can download them. This is what I found. I just found this on the internet, and basically I just use Fireworks. You can use any photo editing programs. It doesn't really matter, and I just split them all up into the three different ones, and they have. It's important to note that they have. I got rid of the white background on these, so that way that it looks like this. It looks real nice on the background. So yeah, you can cut those up any way you want. And I'm going to be using TexturePacker in this um, tutorial. Um, this is TexturePacker's website. It's codeandweb.com/TexturePacker, and you can get it for free, a free version of it. It's not very expensive, and it's super useful. So I would encourage that you actually get this if you are serious about making games, because creating sprite sheets is something you have to do a lot when you're making your games. Especially if you're writing for like iPhone or Android, something that has limited memory, it's very useful to be able to put all of your sprites onto one sheet, so that way it can draw a whole bunch of different sprites onto the screen with only one draw call, which will drastically decrease the time it takes to load. Um, so first of all, let me open TexturePacker here, and so this is what you're started with, and all you have to do, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to drag and drop my three sprites onto here, and it's going to create a little sprite sheet for me. Now, an XNA, you don't want it to rotate, I don't think. TexturePacker works really well with like Cocos 2D and Engine for Android. For XNA, you need to use a separate loader that I've found. I think it's linked on their website, but I'm going to show you how to set that up in Microsoft and Visual Studio for XNA. So I'm going to leave that for a second and go back to um, here, because the first thing we want to do for our animated sprite is to create just a regular sprite class, and then the animated sprite will come from that class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a new folder and I'm going to call it helper classes. That's not a great name, but that's usually what I call this folder. And then we're just going to make a new class, and it's going to be called Sprite. Okay, so first of all, let's include, my hands are freezing, so I might not type very well today, but we need the framework, and then we need framework.graphics. Okay, so the things our sprite class needs, a texture, obviously, and then also a vector too for the position, and then create the constructor, and then we want to have to pass it a texture and a position when we initialize it, and then go ahead and set these to there. That's not what I want there. Okay. And now the other thing we want to have in our sprite class is a draw method. If we take a look back at my menu screen real quick, this is basically our menu logo. logo is a sprite. We're not using it as one, and I'm going to change that over. But the call to actually draw it is kind of ugly. And also, I'm doing this calculation every frame, finding the middle of the screen, which I don't need to be doing. It really only needs to find it once. So this is going to be a really good way to solve that problem. So we're going to create a draw method in our sprite class, and pass it a sprite batch. We did something kind of similar to this with the TileEngine. So we have in our TileEngine class, we have our draw function, and we pass it a sprite batch. It's kind of going to work the same way. So we're going to do sprite batch.draw. This is inside the sprite class. We're going to tell it to draw the texture, and we want the vector 2. That's how we're going to tell it where it goes, and then color out white so that it doesn't have a tint. So now at this point, we can actually go back to the menu screen and change that menu logo over to a sprite. So include your helper classes, or using your helper classes folder that you just made. Now we're going to change the menu logo to a sprite. And then I'm gonna keep that there so I don't forget what it's called. It's going to be a new sprite, and then we got to give it the texture 2D, which is right here. It's the same texture 2D that we're using before. And now we need this vector that's right here. And so I'm just going to put that there. Okay, so let's do this because I forgot about this. I have to have the width of the logo to find where it's positioned. So let's do this. We'll have texture 2D menu logo texture equals that. And now here, copy that. We'll just put that there. And then same here. We'll use that to find the width. Okay. So now down here, all we have to do is this. And it should draw it the exact same way as before. Okay. So what's happening here is we've created this sprite class, and the menu logo is a sprite. And we've passed the texture, which is the same texture we used before, and then we set the position here. And then, so right here, it sets the texture and the position, and when we call draw on that sprite batch, it draws it just like we were drawing here, but it looks a lot cleaner here, which is nice. And in case you're a little bit confused about the sprite batch thing, this is actually the same sprite batch. We only have one sprite batch right now. Sometimes it's useful to have more than one if you're doing a bunch of different layers, and usually it will work just fine only having one, but sometimes it becomes an issue. I think we'll be able to do it just one. So right now, everything that's getting drawn is drawn through the ScreenManager class. So it's passing the sprite batch to the ScreenManager, and then in the ScreenManager, it's drawing the current screen. And right now, the current screen is the menu screen, because we have this list of screens, and we've added a new menu screen to that list, and we've set the current screen to be the menu screen. So this is what's getting called, and it's the same sprite batch that we started at the beginning. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to start creating the AnimatedSprite class. And I'm going to do a couple things real quick to prepare the sprite class to be able to handle that. And the first thing I want to do is create a rectangle and call it bounds. And right here, if you see, I think you can see where my mouse is. We have the source rectangle, and what that does is it only draws the part of the texture that this rectangle defines. So normally what we want to, if we want it to be just like normal, we'll set the bounds is going to be texture bounds, and that's just the whole texture. So this rectangle is the same size as the texture. So right now it will work. It'll still do the same thing, which is good to test it a lot when you change things like this. Make sure you're not screwing anything else up. So let's go ahead and add in our menu screen. Let's go ahead and add our coins. So real quick, let's go back to TexturePacker, and so we've added our three textures here, and then we're gonna hit publish. All right, first change this to generic XML. That's important. I believe you can also use the JSON array, but I like the XML a little better. No, don't delete. Publish. Okay. And I've got two of them going on, so I could be a little bit more prepared this time. That's what that Super Mario Clone 2 was. Okay, and then we're gonna save this as just coin atlas and save, and then hit OK. Okay, so now we have our coin atlas and then our coin atlas sprite sheet, and then so the way the pipeline works, you can't actually have two. It doesn't look at the extension when it's looking at files. So change the name. I like to just change it to texture, so I have a texture and an atlas, and then you can open this and then kind of familiarize yourself with the way the let's just open it here. You can familiarize yourself with the way it creates the XML, with the way TexturePacker creates the XML, and it's pretty simple. Okay, so now what we need to do is XNA, the way it is right now, doesn't really have a way of loading the texture atlas. Not like Cocoa Studio does. Cocoa Studio does it really well. So what we're going to use, see if I can find it here, is this third-party Ninja's TexturePacker XNA content pipeline extension. And this will allow us to load the texture atlas pretty easily. And I believe this is also linked from the TexturePacker website. So I've already downloaded this and extracted it here. So what we want to do, right click on your solution and then add existing project, and then go to where you extracted the third-party Ninja's XNA utility, and then we want Windows because we're developing for Windows right now. Open that and see it added it here in our Solution Explorer. And then you also want to add existing project, the content one, and this is what will actually allow us to load the XML file as an atlas. So here on your main Super Mario project, you want to add reference to this one, the Windows one, not content. And then on the content project that XNA creates, add a reference to the content XNA utility. And now we are set up to start loading those. So what we can do now, let's go to our, let's do one other thing first that I have to, we need to change the way our content manager works, because right now we have no way of actually loading the texture atlas. So let's create another dictionary here. Hold on. We need to also include, this here. So let's create a dictionary. And then we want this to be a texture atlas. And we will call this texture atlases. And then here, texture atlases equals new dictionary. And go ahead and change this to a to this string. I don't know exactly the difference between it. I think it's that you can set the string equal to null. It doesn't really matter here, but I like to keep it consistent. Okay, so we've got that set up. And now we also need to have a way of adding the texture atlases to that. And the way, I'm just going to copy this, because it's going to be essentially the same thing. Add texture atlas. And then this needs to be texture atlas. So does this. Atlases, add it to that one. Atlases. Get rid of this. Okay, and then I'm gonna add atlas here because so it will be less confusing later when I come back and look at it. Okay, so now we have a way of adding the texture atlas to that. So let's go ahead and add to our content. We have our sprite sheet. This coin large here. And the reason I call it a coin large is because there are other coins in the game that are smaller. The large one is going to be, I think the coins that are actually like that you pick up are smaller sometimes. I think I'm not positive about that. I'll have to go look at it later. But in the sprites I found anyways, there are two different sizes, so I just went ahead and named it large. So let's add this to our content here. And we have coin large here. And then so at this point, let's go ahead and make sure everything's working correctly. So let's create a sprite, call it coin sprite. Oh, sorry, and here we got to add the texture. And it's just coin large. Back to MenuScreen, initialize this coin sprite. And then ContentManager get instance dot texture, not texture atlases, textures coin large, and then for now we're just going to put it at the top left for testing purposes, and then we have to tell it to draw the coin sprite just like we did the menu sprite. Let's test that. Okay, we have problems. Oh gosh. Slight technical difficulty here. Okay, give me a second. Okay, so I don't know what that happened, but it's working now. This is the wrong. This is that one. We need not coin large. We need yeah, get rid of that. We need coin texture because that's the one we created with TexturePacker. So go back to ContentManager now. Coin texture, but let's go ahead and name this coin large. We'll name both the texture and the texture atlas coin large, and then that will make it a lot easier to not get them mixed up. So now let's go back to the menu and then hit play. Okay, so there's our texture our sprite sheet that we made, and it's just showing the whole thing because we're not telling it which frame to show. Okay, so let's go back to our sprite, and then I want to go ahead and provide a way for setting for using sprite sheets with our normal sprite class and not animated sprites. So let's just go ahead and create a way of setting this. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have our sprite atlas. Sorry, you gotta include using the third-party ninjas XNA utility, and then this is going to be a sprite atlas, I think, texture atlas, not sprite, texture atlas, atlas, and let's set it to null so that way you don't have to give an atlas. Same with the atlas region. Let's also set that to null, so that way you can still just give a texture in a position like we're doing right now, and it will just draw the whole thing. So the way we're going to do this, if either one of these are null, then it's going to set the bounds to the whole thing, because if one of these are null, then we don't have enough information to pick the frame that we're wanting to display. So if the atlas is null or the atlas region is null, then do that. If it's not, then we're going to do, let's go ahead and add this up here. Let's get a class wide variable here for the atlas. And then let's say before this, if the atlas doesn't equal null, then we will add it. And this will be useful later, doing it like this for when we start our animated sprite class, because we can go ahead and pass the atlas through to the sprite, which is what the animated sprite will be inheriting from, and then it will just store it here, and we don't have to worry about that in the animated sprite class. So we'll do atlas get region, and then the atlas region string, and then you have to add bounds, and then that will set the bounds to it'll get the atlas that we created, that TexturePacker created, and it will find the region in that atlas and set the bounds to that. So that's what it will draw. So now what we need to do is actually add the atlas. So let's go here, add this to the content, and now this is very important. It will throw this error if you don't do this step right here. XML is not the XNA intermediate format, missing XNA content root element. And what you need to do is click here, and then content importer, change this to texture atlas importer. If that's not there, then that means you did not set the reference. You did not add the reference for the XNA utility content to your Super Mario content. So that if that's not there, go back and make sure you did that correctly, because that part's very important. Okay, so now that we have that, we want to add texture atlas to our content manager, and it's called coin atlas, and we're going to call it coin large, so that way they have the same name, and it'll be really easy to pair together. Now go back to our menu screen, and after the position of our coin sprite, we want to give it the texture atlas. So that's going to be in the content manager, and then we have texture atlases instead of just textures, and it's also coin large. And now we have to give it the region we want. And the way this works, and you can see it here if I open this, the names of the different regions are the names of the files. Again, don't worry about this FW. That's because I used Fireworks. Yours probably won't have that if you use. Yours won't have anything like that if you use like Paint or GIMP or something like that. So they correspond to the actual file names. So what we want to do for the region, let's just go ahead and give it the first one, which is coin large 1 minus .f and fw.png. So you can see that's the same here. And then what that will do, since neither atlas or atlas region are null, because I've set an atlas and I've set the region, it will set the bounds equal to that region that I gave it, and it should only draw that part of the sprite sheet. So there you go. Now it's only drawing the one. Now if I come back here and I do 2, and we go back to here, you can see that 2 is the darker, is a little bit slightly more like orangish color. And I play that, it's going to show that one. So that's set it up. Now we can now use sprite sheets with TexturePacker with our with just normal sprites. So that will be useful later on. Right now, not so much because I'm not using a sprite sheet for like my menu or anything. But if I wanted to, I could. I could just pack all of my textures together into one sprite sheet and then load them this way. And then it would be you probably won't notice a difference on the computer, but on, like I said, on smaller devices that have limited RAM, much more limited RAM, that would help a lot, and it would increase the frame rate. Or in just larger games. With this, it's not gonna be a problem. But even on the computer with much more involved games, you're gonna want to do that to increase the frames per second. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and start creating our AnimatedSprite class. So we want to create a new class. Call that AnimatedSprite. I'm going to go ahead and log out of Steam real quick. I think. Okay, so we have our AnimatedSprite class. Now, our AnimatedSprite class is going to inherit our regular sprite. So just go ahead and add that there. And then we'll add the constructor. No, not sprite, base. And it's going to give us, it's going to not like that because, okay, so the things we need first, we still have to give it a texture. I gotta, using Microsoft.xna.framework, using Microsoft.xna.framework.graphics. Okay, we still have to give it a texture. Come on. Okay, texture and then vector to position. And now we're going to pass that on to there here. Okay, so we've got that, so that'll work. Right now, this is exactly the same as our normal sprite, except it has less functionality now because it will only let you create a normal sprite with a no texture atlas. So let's go ahead and start creating that part of it. So we have our, we have to also include this here, texture atlas. And now this one, we are not going to allow you to not give a value. So no equals null here. You have to give a value because otherwise just use a normal sprite. And it wouldn't make sense to use an animated sprite without giving it a texture atlas. So we need that. So I would suggest you look into string.format. It's going to be very useful for here, and this is how I'm going to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a base format, which is going to be something like for our coin, for example, it'll be coin large, like that. And basically, that will tell our class that this is what every frame is going to be of this format. It will replace this with the frame number. So it's also important that in TexturePacker all of your frames are numbered and it makes sense, and that they're in order. If they're not, I mean, you could program it so that way you could set the order of the frames, but that would be a pain in the ass. So I don't think you want to do that. So anyways, we have our base format, and then we want to have a start frame, an end frame delay, and let's go ahead and we'll call it millisecond delay, just so that way when you're calling this, it will show up in the content on the tooltip, and you will immediately know what that delay, what unit the delay is in. And then let's add here. We'll have, you don't have to use the same naming convention. I tend to either put an M at the front or an underscore. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. And then we also going to need a current frame. That will be so that way we can actually increment the frame and go between the different ones. And then we'll also store the delay, and we'll also need to store the time passed, which that will be the time passed between each frame. So we'll add, well, every time the update method that we will create later is called, we'll add the amount of time that's passed since the last update, and then check that against the whatever time we give for delay. So here, all I'm going to do is just set those to the class variables that I just created. So give me a sec. Oops. Okay. So now that we have that, we want it to automatically set the bounds to the first frame. Okay, so right now we can't access the bounds. So what you have to do to fix that, we're going to make all of these protected. They could also be public, but then you would be able to access these variables outside. And this will only allow these variables to be accessed from classes that inherit the class, which is what we want. So we have, now we can use bounds, and we're going to set that equal. We have the atlas now, and get region, and we're going to use string.format, base format, and then start frame. This one. Dot bounds. So this will automatically set the sprite to the first frame in this base format that you pass it. Okay. So now the next thing we want to do, let's go ahead and test this. Let's change our coin sprite to an animated sprite. We don't need that anymore. Oh, change this right here to animated sprite. So we have our atlas. We've already given it the atlas. We need the base format, so that's coin large .png, like that. So make sure that's right. Yeah, so this bracket 0 bracket will be the thing that gets replaced with the frame number. And then start frame starts at frame 1, ends at frame 3, and that's just corresponding to these numbers here. And then for our delay, let's set it at 100 milliseconds. So it'll change 10 times a second, which actually won't do anything right now if we did that correctly. It should just draw the first frame. Okay, so that should be frame 1 if we look here. Yeah, see, that's the more yellow one. So that's good. Okay, now what we need to do is create an update class, or update method, I'm sorry, for our animated sprite class. So it's going to be pass it a game time, so that way we can get the amount of time that's passed. And what we want to do is for every time this is called, we're going to add the elapsed milliseconds that gets called. So say every frame is, it says getting 60 frames per second, then, okay, so it's getting, I can't do that math in my head, but say every frame that's passed is 2 milliseconds, something like that, then, or 10 milliseconds, then, and we set our delay to 100, so every 10 frames that gets passed, time passed will be over 100, and so we want to go to the next frame. So we're going to say if time passed is greater than or equal to delay, then it's going to switch to frames. And then go ahead and set time passed back to 0. Or else, once it reaches that threshold, once it reaches enough time, then it will just keep going every time it updates, and we don't want it to do that. We want every frame to switch after the delay we give it. So now let's say if let's set current frame up here. Current frame is going to be the same as the start frame when it starts. So let's say if current frame is less than end frame, then current frame increment. If it's not, then current frame is going to be start frame. Then it goes back. And it's just a basic loop. We'll create, in a second, we'll create a way of doing different types of looping, which we will need to do for the coin. Okay, so now what we need is a way to actually call this update method. There actually is not one right now here in our screen class. So we need to go, first of all, let's go to screen. Create a virtual method for updating. Like that. And in your ScreenManager class, create the same update method, and then you're going to call that on the current screen. Just like we drew it. That's the same exact thing. And then go back to your main game class, and in your update method, you're going to call ScreenManager.update and pass the game time. So that's going to call this here. So now in our screen classes, we can override update, and we don't actually need this. We don't need the base update, just like we don't need base draw here because nothing happens here. So that's doing nothing. If we wanted to put something there, then we'd want to do that, but I can't think of a reason why we'd want to now. So now what we need to do in here is update our coin sprite. Let's see what that does. Nothing. Right. Because we're just moving the frame, this variable frame, but we're not actually resetting the bounds. So what we need to do is reset this. And we only need to do it when it's actually switching frames. So don't put it out here. Put it here so that way it doesn't have to do that every time. And then change the start frame to current frame because that's what we wanted to set it to. And let's try that. Okay. So now it's going between them like this. It's going one. Okay, what did I just do? It's going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But what we actually want it to do, and it will make it look kind of like it's flipping, like it's turning around. We want it to do 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, and it will look much better than this. So what I'm going to do that, I'm going to create a enum up here. So we're going to call it repeat mode. Our first repeat mode is going to be looping, and then we'll also have ping pong, which is, I think, a good name for what I was just describing. That's what we're going to want our coin to do. And then here, we're going to set the repeat mode. And it's going to be repeat mode, and we're going to go ahead and default it to loop. And now we'll have We'll store it here. Why did I've done that twice now? I don't want it either. That's going to be this one. So it's going to default to loop. So this right now is the loop. So what we're going to do is say if repeat mode equals, then do this. Okay. But now let's do the ping pong mode. Now to do this, I'm going to create a direction variable. Just set it to 1. And it's going to be this exact same thing here for at the beginning, except it's going to plus equal, we're going to tell it to plus equal the direction. And this is, it's going to do that if direction, whoops, I deleted that. If direction's 1, then do that. Like I said, my hands are really cold, so I'm having a hard time typing well. If direction is 1, which it is from the start, direction's 1, then add 1 until it gets to the end frame. And then once it gets to the end frame, direction is going to be 0. Let's add, and then we're going to say if direction equals 0, not 0, sorry, -1. If it's -1, then it's going to do the same thing, except it's going to be when it's while it's greater than the start frame. And then once it gets to the start frame, it's going to set direction back to 1. And then it will keep going. So what we want for the, now we just got to set our coin to be repeat mode ping pong. And let's see if I did that right. Yeah, that looks better. And now we can move that to where we want it to go. Let's go back to, where is it? This one. And it's going to be, you know, right above the menu logo and a little bit offset. So we'll say, we can say set the position. Let's make our, let's actually make our position. Let's just do this. Public vector2 position. Let's make it get position. Return the position. So now we can find for the Y, we'll do menu logo dot get position dot Y minus, I don't know, 20. And then for here we'll say menu logo dot get position dot X. I don't know, plus 50 maybe. Can get in a better spot. So still not exactly the right spot, but you get the idea. I'm not going to spend the tutorial just moving that coin around. But yeah, so that's all I'm going to show you in this video, because that's a pretty involved topic. But now you can create animated sprites using TexturePacker, which is very useful. It's very easy to do it this way. You can see from now on, once I actually have my frames, and it's super easy to get it in TexturePacker and then add it to your project and then use it. We may explore some different things with the animated sprites later, with you know, telling them to play, I don't know, a certain speed for one part and then change speeds, things along those lines. But yeah, in the next video, I'm going to start doing the words. And those are also going to be part of the sprite class. We will create basically a text sprite or something along those lines. And so yeah, be sure to subscribe if you like this tutorial series. I should hopefully get the next tutorial up pretty soon with the text. And thanks for watching.